From a composer killed in a bar in the Caribbean to an opera about two men in love set in ancient Rome and written while that love was still a crime, here are 12 opera legends whose truth their own art form kept hidden in the plot. Some of it is beyond any doubt. Some of it scholars are still arguing about. I will tell you which is which every single time. Number 12. George Frideric Handel. Everyone knows Handel wrote Messiah. Far fewer people know that before he was the grand old man of English sacred music, he was, above everything else, a man of the opera house. He wrote around 40 of them, Italian operas full of gods and heroes and impossible love, and for years he ran the most important opera company in London. And whether he loved men is a genuine, open question. Handel never married. There is no record of any romance with a woman, or with a man either. He sealed his private life shut so completely that 3 centuries later we are still standing outside it, guessing. A serious music scholar has written an entire book arguing that a whole body of his private music carries an unmistakable charge of love between men. Others say, we simply cannot know, and that is the honest verdict. The man who filled London's opera stages with longing may well have been a gay man. We cannot prove it, but the question will not go away and serious people keep asking it. Number 11. Reynaldo Hahn. In 1945, a man was appointed director of the Paris Opera, one of the most prestigious positions in the entire musical world. His name was Reynaldo Hahn, a composer of exquisite songs and operettas, and one of the most charming figures in the Paris of his day. And decades earlier, as a young man, Hahn had been the great love of someone you already know from this channel, the novelist Marcel Proust. The two met when they were barely in their 20s and fell into a passionate relationship. Even after the romance cooled, they stayed devoted to each other for the rest of Proust's life, and Proust put a version of Hahn directly into his fiction. So, here's a lovely, quiet fact that music history tends to skate right past. The man who ended his career running the Paris Opera began it as the beloved of the greatest novelist of the century. 2 of the finest artists France produced, in love, as young men. It is simply not a secret once you look. Number 10. Virgil Thomson. In 1934, an opera opened in America unlike anything anyone had seen. It was called Four Saints in 3 acts. Its libretto was written by the famously experimental Gertrude Stein, and it was staged with an all-black cast at a time when that was almost unheard of on a serious opera stage. The composer was Virgil Thomson. Thomson was a gay man, and he moved through a glittering circle of gay and lesbian artists on both sides of the Atlantic. His great collaborator Stein was herself in a famous lifelong partnership with a woman. Together, they made 2 operas that stand as landmarks of American music. Thomson was also, for years, one of the most powerful music critics in the country, which is to say he was both a gay artist and a gay tastemaker, quietly shaping what America listened to, from a life he never pretended was anything other than what it was. Number 9. Mark Blitzstein. In 1937, a young composer wrote a fierce, pro-worker musical drama called The Cradle Will Rock. The government tried to shut the premiere down. So, the director, a 21-year-old named Orson Welles, marched the entire audience 20 blocks to another theater, and the cast performed it from their seats. It became a legend of American stage history. The composer was Mark Blitzstein. Blitzstein was openly gay, remarkably so for his era, writing candidly to his own family about who he was as far back as the 1920s. He poured his politics and his heart into opera and musical theater for the rest of his life. And his life ended in tragedy. In 1964, while traveling in the Caribbean, Blitzstein was attacked and killed by 3 men on the island of Martinique. He was 58, a brave, openly gay artist decades ahead of his time, whose story tends to get a single quiet line in the history books, if it gets one at all. Number 8. Thomas Adès. Now to someone very much alive, because this channel is not only about the buried past. Thomas Adès is widely considered one of the greatest living composers, a British musician whose operas are performed at the grandest houses in the world, from London to New York. Adès is openly gay, and he simply is, without it being a scandal, a secret, or a tragedy. Sit with the distance this represents. Everyone above him on this list who lived in earlier centuries had to hide or code their desire into a plot, or watch their truth get scrubbed from the record after they died. And here's a composer at the absolute summit of the same art form, writing operas for the same great stages, who is out, celebrated, and free. He is what all of them were reaching toward. He is the proof that the erasure finally, slowly, started to lose. Number 7. Karol Szymanowski. In Poland, Karol Szymanowski is considered the greatest composer since Chopin, and he wrote one opera that towers over the rest of his work, an opera that is, when you actually look at what happens in it, astonishingly bold for its time. It is called King Roger. In it, a medieval Sicilian king watches a mysterious, beautiful stranger arrive and preach a new gospel of beauty and desire, and the king becomes utterly consumed by his fascination with this man. That is the opera, a ruler undone by his longing for another man, written by a composer who was himself openly, unmistakably gay, and who elsewhere wrote an entire novel on the theme of love between men. Szymanowski did not hide his desire in the plot so much as build the whole cathedral of the opera around it. And in his devoutly traditional homeland, that is the part of him still most often left politely unmentioned. Number 6. Jake Heggie. Here's a name that proves how completely the ground has shifted. Jake Heggie is, by a wide margin, one of the most successful American opera composers working today. His opera Dead Man Walking, based on the book and the famous film about a nun and a condemned prisoner, has become the most performed new American opera of this century, staged everywhere from San Francisco to the Metropolitan Opera. And Heggie is an openly gay man who talks about it freely, whose husband is part of his public life. There is no code here, no mysterious stranger standing in for the truth, no plot built to smuggle a forbidden feeling past the censors. He is simply an out gay artist at the very top of his field, writing some of the most acclaimed operas of our time under his own name and his own truth. Every man higher on this list who had to hide, and everyone who died before it was safe, was pushing, without knowing it, toward exactly this. Toward a world where a gay composer's biggest problem is which grand opera house to premiere at next. Number 5. Gian Corigliano. In 1991, the Metropolitan Opera in New York premiered its first brand new opera in a quarter of a century. It was a lavish, ghost-haunted spectacle called The Ghosts of Versailles, and it was a sensation. The man who composed it was Gian Corigliano. Corigliano is one of the most celebrated American composers alive. He has won the Pulitzer Prize. He has even won an Academy Award for his film music, and he is an openly gay man married to another composer. Think about what that Met premiere actually represented. The most establishment opera house in America, the very definition of high culture, opening its stage for the first time in 25 years for a brand new work by an openly gay composer. The institutions that once would have quietly kept men like him out were now commissioning them, celebrating them, and putting their names in lights above the door. Number 4. Lou Harrison. Lou Harrison was one of the most original American composers of the 20th century, a bearded, big-hearted West Coast experimenter who fused the music of Asia and Europe into something entirely his own. He was openly gay from young adulthood, used his coming out as an act of protest during the Second World War, and spent decades with the man he loved, an electrician who helped him build the strange, beautiful instruments his music needed. And in 1971, Harrison did something almost no one else in opera had dared. He wrote an opera called Young Caesar, and he made its central subject the love between two men in the ancient world, a Roman leader and a foreign king. No metaphor, no mysterious stranger standing in for the truth, just a gay love story from history put on the operatic stage plainly by a man who refused to disguise what he was writing about. In an art form that had spent centuries hiding this exact thing inside its plots, Lou Harrison simply took it out and let it stand in the open. That took a particular kind of courage, and he had it in abundance. Number 3. Giancarlo Menotti. If you have ever seen an opera on television, you have this man to thank. In 1951, Giancarlo Menotti wrote the first opera ever composed specifically for TV, a gentle Christmas story called Amal and the Night Visitors, and it was broadcast into millions of American homes and became a beloved holiday tradition for decades. He won the Pulitzer Prize not once, but twice. Menotti's life partner, for many years, was another composer whose most famous piece is the one the world reaches for in moments of pure grief. An aching work for strings you have certainly heard at funerals and memorials. The two of them met as students, built a shared life and a shared body of work, and even bought a house together whose name became known throughout the music world. Two of the most successful composers in America, partners in art and in life, at the very height of the buttoned-up 1950s. They did not shout it from the rooftops because the era did not allow that. But among the people who mattered, it was simply understood and never denied. Number 2. He wrote what many consider the single most performed opera by any of the composers on this entire list. Before we name him, sit with the scale of him. His melodies are so woven into the culture that you have hummed them without knowing whose they were, at weddings, in films, in adverts. He is, by any measure, one of the most beloved composers who has ever lived. His name is Tchaikovsky, and I have placed him this high on an opera list on purpose, because his operas are where his hidden heart runs closest to the surface. But he is not number one, because for all his fame, Tchaikovsky spent his life terrified of exposure, forced into a disastrous marriage to protect himself, writing his longing into other people's voices because he could not risk his own. He is the greatest of the men on this list who had to hide. The man at number one did something Tchaikovsky never could. He stopped hiding, and he built the truth openly into the greatest operas of his century and dared the world to watch. Number one, he almost single-handedly brought an entire nation's opera back from the dead. His country had produced almost no great operas for centuries, and then, in 1945, he wrote one that stunned the world and put his homeland back at the center of the art form overnight. He went on to found a music festival that still runs today. He is, without much argument, the most important opera composer of the 20th century. His name was Benjamin Britten, and the love of his life was the singer Peter Pears, for whom he wrote role after role, tailoring the greatest music of his career to the exact sound of the voice of the man he loved. But look at what else he did, right out in the open, at a time when love between men was a criminal offense in his country. He wrote an opera with no women in it at all. It is called Billy Budd, and it takes place entirely on an 18th century warship, a world of nothing but men. At its heart is an officer who is slowly, secretly destroyed by his obsession with a beautiful young sailor, unable to name or admit what he feels, and unleashing catastrophe because of it. It is one of the most nakedly, achingly homoerotic works ever to hold the great opera stages of the world. And Britten wrote it, and had it performed for the most respectable audiences in London and New York in 1951, while the very thing it was about could still have sent him to prison in his own country. He put forbidden love on the biggest stages on earth and called it a sea story, and the man he loved sang in it. Britten and Pears stayed together for the rest of Britten's life. When he was dying, the country that had once criminalized what he was made him a lord. He's the only composer ever to receive that honor. The man who spent his life setting hidden love to music finished it as a peer of the realm, with the love of his life at his side, having quietly forced an entire art form to make room for the truth. Opera was the one place they were allowed to sing it out loud, as long as nobody admitted what it was really about.